Did you pour one out this weekend?
For for the band. I inadvertently spilled a lot of alcohol this weekend, Brad, but it had nothing to do with Microsoft Band. Yeah. Well, I mean, arguably, Microsoft Band really died about 2 years ago-ish.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sort of liken this event to the recent news story where Microsoft announced the end of support for Windows 10 Mobile,
Hmm.
or re-revealed. I mean, it wasn't a secret, but where it's another time to open a scab on a wound which we thought had healed, and then to be reminded that no, we still harbor a terrible, terrible grudge.
The convenient thing is that they adhered to the policy of if you have bad news, Friday at about
Hmm.
5 p.m. is a good time to make that announcement, which
Right,
is which is
right.
when this all went out. But I will give some credit to Microsoft here. Granted, nobody. I'm hoping nobody's bought a band recently. But if you used a Microsoft band between 12/1/2018 and 3/1/2019, they're actually going to give you a refund on
Yeah.
some of your purchase.
So, by the way, that was cagey on their part
Hmm.
because there are literally 17 people who were using a Microsoft Band in that time frame, and
Oh,
so
sure.
you hear a lot of moaning from people who say, "Well, I'm gonna fish it out of a drawer and put it on,
Hmm.
and maybe I'll get a refund." And it's like, guys, seriously, like, I don't know. I don't remember the exact timing of anything anymore, but after obviously both generations of the band had reliability or
Hmm.
issues, quality issues. They were innovative in ways that were striking at the time, but they also were missing some kind of obvious features which were striking at the time. Um, and in the wake of the Band 2, um, which for me included a broken strap, I had to replace, get the
Hmm.
device replaced. Um, I wrote an article about, this is how Microsoft could fix the Band. And then I tried a Fitbit and realized this thing already does everything that I'm complaining about. And so at that time, and this was probably 2.5 years ago, I just switched back to Fitbit, and you benefit from the many advantages of that ecosystem, several day battery life,
Yep.
smaller devices so far, et cetera, et cetera. So, look, I know this is a lot like Windows Phone, and I mean that in every way imaginable. There literally are some people still using it. Of course there are, and you're kind of out of options here. I mean, they're literally shutting this thing down. Like, they're not
Hmm.
even going to let you really kind of use it, even if you wanted to. So it'll just be a pretty thing you can have on your desk.
Yeah. And it will technically still work after the date. It just
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought they were
you
literally
could
shutting.
log all your information in Excel if you really
Oh,
wanted. Um,
okay. Yep.
not
Where's
ideal.
the transition tool, Brad? Where's the
Yeah.
import your data into Fitbit? Like the when Groove went away and they were,
Hmm.
dangling Spotify.
Yeah. Groove is another one of those things that not fit for this world.
Oh well.
Yeah. I mean, the question is what and I don't know what are people going to transition to. I guess if you have a band, a Fitbit is probably the logical move. I would also personally recommend that if you have an iPhone, an Apple Watch is probably even better than a Fitbit, but only if you have an iPhone,
Yeah, if you
obviously.
have an iPhone, an Apple Watch is definitely an option to consider.
Yep.
When the Apple Watch first came out, it was actually missing a number of features that were available in the band at the time. That's all evened out, right? And Apple, of course, transitioned the watch
Hmm.
much in the way that Microsoft positioned the Microsoft band, which was health, fitness, and productivity, but mostly health and fitness. Like there's a real focus there, and Apple's done a good job on that stuff. I mean, Fitbit does most of that stuff as well. Obviously, that's pretty much all they do. Um, but yeah, there are definitely options out there. And then there's some things I haven't tried. Garmin makes devices. There's Android Wear devices if you're into that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And there are other companies that just make health and fitness trackers. I mean, if your goal is to measure steps or calories burned or your heart rate or whatever it is, I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there.
Yep. There's a lot of options, and
Yeah,
do your research, as they would say,
yeah.
and find out what's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
I had something else to bring up, but so this is a giant cluster. Let me find the actual article here.
Okay.
Just typical cluster. Here, this is the headline.
Mm-hmm.
USB 4 will offer the same specs as Thunderbolt 3, but won't be available until 2021. Nothing like good old-fashioned port confusion to make it just a terrible experience that you never know what you're going to get when it plugs in.
It's even worse than that, Brad. Like, USB 4, what a hilariously simple name that is. They'll never use that name. Whatever the name of that organization that's behind the USB standard is, the stupidest group of human beings on earth. Like, they keep rebranding everything. So, like, literally, existing versions of USB 3, meaning 3.0, 3.1, are under USB 3.2 now being renamed, even though they're not changing in any way. So they're supposedly USB 3.2 something. Who cares what the names are? So fantastic. USB 3.2, which was so simple a name, they had to get rid of that too. Will offer about 50% the data transfer speed of Thunderbolt 3. I believe that's 20 gigabits per second versus 40. The previous version, we'll call it 3.1, I think, was probably 10. Who knows? Mm-hmm. USB 3.0 was probably 5. I don't remember off the top of my head. But, they'll get there eventually, guys. Just wait. Wait for it.
The real loser here is obviously the consumer. This is just going to create more confusion because it's all going to be the same port that you just plug in, but you don't know what features you're going to get. And then inevitably what will happen is that a manufacturer building a lower end PC will just put in just the generic USB, let's just say 3.0 or whatever port in 2025, and you'll buy a Thunderbolt accessory and you'll plug it in. You're like, what the?
Yep. It's even worse than that. It's like everything is worse. What you were describing sounds terrible. All of it is worse. Like, remember back in the day when you had like a Type A port, like a full-size USB port, and they went from USB 2 to 3. Most PC makers, not all of them, but most of them, would color that port blue so you could tell the difference. But that itself is the problem. Why would you include the older port on a PC? What is that? Mm-hmm. It just include the new one everywhere. Don't make us hunt around and look, right? So as we've moved to USB Type-C, or USB-C as we call it, the port, right, which can or cannot have Thunderbolt 3 capabilities inside of it, there's no color scheme anymore, right? And so you actually have to look at the little it's like a drawing or a glyph or whatever, which is like 1-point type on the side of a computer to determine if two identical ports do the same thing. And even then, by the way, you can't actually tell what the capabilities are. But this is just straight up USB-C versus Thunderbolt 3. Mm-hmm. The computer I'm using right now has this problem, and this is an absolutely wonderful computer otherwise. But this is the confusion of USB. This is the name, that the word universal is in the name. like don't make multiple versions of it. Just make the one good one. Why? It's one of the things that Apple kind of got right for all the complaints you can make against Macs and so forth. When USB 3 became a thing, they stopped using USB 2 ports. We're just using USB 3. And then, of course, they went to USB-C, which is its own controversy. But there's no question on an Apple MacBook Pro, whatever, that if you plug something into it, it's Thunderbolt 3, right? All of them are, I think. I'm saying that like I'm positive, but I think that's true. There are some internal differences on the MacBook Pros with 15 versus 13 inches, or Touch Bar versus non-Touch Bar, because it has something to do with the controllers and the number of ports and so forth. But the ports are all identical, and that's the way it should be. They should be universal, So this USB group, whatever the name of it is, combined with PC makers, is creating the perfect storm of stupidity. It's beautiful.
It is. It's a good thing we have a controlling body who is trying to make that easy.
Yeah, standards are important. Apparently, multiple standards are better than one standard.
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. Nothing. Paul, the only other thing really I have for today is, do you remember? I don't know. Last week before you left,
I already
said,
know where this one's going. Yeah.
Hey, I think it might be snowing here substantially this weekend, and where you're going, it's typically 24 hours later, and you're like, it'll be fine. Can you give us an AccuWeather update? What's the weather like outside?
So, as you I believe no. There were two major snowstorms in this area during my short trip to Boston. The first one in where I am now, which is Norwood, Massachusetts, delivered approximately 6 inches of snow. That was Friday night into Saturday morning. Where I live in Pennsylvania, the second storm, which happened, roughly 6 hours earlier from here, delivered about 5 or 6 inches of snow there.
Mhm.
Here, I just got the official word from the gentleman who plowed the driveway so I can get out of here. 14 and a half inches. And that's on top of the 5 or 6 inches we already had. So there is more snow on the ground here right now than I have seen in 3 winters, or maybe 4 winters. I don't know.
That's a lot of snow.
Yeah, and it was one of those things like when you think about the timing of it, and I have to drive home, right? And so
Mhm.
all things, if everything goes perfectly, I can get home in about 5 hours, and that includes a stop to get gas and like some kind of fast food thing. Um, the drive here, because I drove through snow for a couple hours, because it actually snowed Friday morning as well, where I live, it was about 6.5 hours, somewhere in there. 6.5, no, about 6 hours, I guess. And so like, thank you, Brad. Other people won't know this, but I mean, you're doing the podcast with me an hour early, so I can try to
Mhm.
get out here as early as possible. But um, you kind of have to do. It's kind of a weird geography math kind of a thing where you look at the map and you're like, if the storm's going to be like this where I am, and the storm's
Yeah.
going to be like this where I'm currently in Boston, and
Mhm.
because it's moving from where I live to where I am, I would be driving into it. Like I could possibly be in the storm the entire way with. And so originally I was going to go home Sunday morning, and that didn't make any sense at all because I would literally
Right.
hit the worst part of the storm everywhere I was. And so it made sense to kind of wait it out. So the snow, I believe it's actually stopped snowing finally. And I think the highways are going to be clear. I think it's going to be okay. But the rationale for this trip, unfortunately, was it was a surprise birthday party for a friend, a 50th birthday party. It was originally scheduled for the previous weekend, which is when I was in Barcelona. And so I figured they would go ahead without me because
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, I'm traveling for work. It's no, I
Yeah.
can't do anything about it. But they rescheduled it to accommodate me, which was really nice. Um, but that also
Here
meant
you
that I
are.
got home,
Yeah.
from an international trip, not a lot of sleep, and then had to get in a car and drive. And my wife got sick, and so I delayed it a day, which was probably for the best. Honestly, I probably would have driven into a truck or something. Um, but yeah, it meant that I was part of three different snow events. The first one was minor, but it was where I lived on Friday morning. Yeah, Friday morning, and then
Mhm.
the snowpocalypse that occurred here. It's like, oh well. You'll be happy to hear, by the way, my daughter has now missed her 125th day of school this season. She obviously doesn't
Impressive.
have. Yeah, it's quite an accomplishment. I don't know exactly how someone can graduate from high school without actually going to high school, but I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah. Well, that's. I get, there's
It's
always
crazy.
tutoring. I got. Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah, how was the weather there? Did obviously got snow
We only
or
got
something?
so it started with 3 days out there. Like you're gonna get 6 inches of snow.
Hmm.
24 hours out there. Like you're gonna get 4 inches of snow.
Right.
We ended up getting like probably 2 inches, maybe.
Oh, that's great. That would
Yeah.
have been welcome. That would be pretty.
Yeah. It's that is in my opinion the optimal amount of snow. It's enough to cover the grass so it looks real nice and pretty, but the streets aren't a mess. I didn't have to shovel my
Shoveling
driveway
is
because
not
it,
an
it
issue. Yeah.
yeah it's the right amount of snow. Any more,
You
too
should.
much.
I assume that newscasts are probably the same everywhere, right? But you think in a place where Boston, where it's seasoned to snow,
Hmm.
God, they treat it like the world is ending. It's like the snow forecast guys are out. They got like people in the corners of streets with like measuring
Yep.
sticks, and
Did they
they're
have
making
someone by the salt
snowballs.
pile?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. Yep. Yeah. It's just
It's my
yes, the
favorite.
truck is moving salt between hills. I think that's all they do. They just move the
Yep.
salt around.
There's always that
Um,
one guy. It's like, yep, there's still salt on the pile. It is getting lower
yeah,
every
it's
time.
unbelievable.
Well, before you roll home, you got anything else for us? Any wise words before you end up in a ditch?
Well, because we're on this podcast, I don't know what the resolution to this was, but I was literally just about to post a premium post, and the site went down. So
Oh,
hopefully that's been resolved. but
Working
I will
fine
check
here.
that afterward. Here. Yeah, so I have a post about Intel and Microsoft that hopefully will go up today.
Hmm.
I'll try. And then my goal, it's 10, almost 10:15 now. So I mean, this is about an hour and 15 minutes earlier than I was
Hmm.
thinking I was going to get out of here, and I'm hoping that'll make the difference because you figure 10:30, 3. If I could get through home like 3:34, I mean,
Yeah,
that would be nice.
that's
So
a
I'm
day of
gonna.
driving.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, when I bought an audio cable, I told you about the audio cable
Yeah.
problem, right? That did fix the problem. So
Oh,
yeah,
good.
I'll at least be able to listen to something other than my own murderous thoughts on the way home, and that will be fun.
Just driving. How much I hate technology.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Why doesn't anything ever work?
Should have
Yeah,
just stayed a banker and just not dealt with this.
exactly. Yeah, it was okay making 25 grand a year.
All right, folks. Well, on that happy note, we're going to wrap it up today. We should be back tomorrow from the friendly offices of Paul Thurrott and Brad Sams or something. And have yourselves a wonderful Monday, and we'll catch you back here on Tuesday.